where it's role models. We're highlighting authors and writers. And we start off the show by thanking Marcela Landres for helping us to identify wonderful, outstanding authors. And today we have one of those persons online. They're coming in from Colorado. Should be a lot cooler than it is here in California right now. We're up in the hundreds, but I'm not complaining. I'm grateful that we have wonderful weather. So today's guest is Jonathan Marcantoni. He's been very well known in his writings. He talks about the idea of people leaving Puerto Rico, but I don't want to get too heavy into all the background because it's huge. I mean, you're going to have to go to his Facebook and his sites and look at his books because it's just very explosive information about thinking about ourselves, about living in Puerto Rico and leaving the island as well. So first of all, Jonathan, thank you for being on the program.
Well, thank you for having me. I have to thank Marcela as well afterwards.
We all owe a lot to her because I know she helps a lot of people print their books and prepare for understanding the whole market. Let's go back to you. Tell us where you're from. Tell us how you got to Colorado.
Well, I was born in Philadelphia, but I have no memory of it. So it's sort of just a technicality. I lived up and down the East Coast growing up. Both my parents were born in San Juan. I spent most of my childhood going there yearly for summers, for Christmases. But I grew up mostly in the Southeast, though. And I call Tampa my home because that was where I got my bachelor's degree, which was in Spanish studies, and also where I met my wife and became a father. So that's the life I live now. So that's so when people ask me where I'm from, I say Tampa usually.
How'd you end up in Colorado?
Well, I did a brief stint in the military, kind of had some economic problems after I got out of college, and I fixed medical equipment. It was about as far flung from my interests as you could be. But it allowed me a lot of things, allowed me to get the house I currently live in, and also allowed me to write books. And while I was in the military, I co-founded I Know Publishing, signed a lot of writers, and wrote 3 of my books, including one that's in Spanish. I'm kind of switching over into writing predominantly in Spanish now. And so now I'm out and teaching. I teach at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs, teach English composition. And, so far, so good.
That sounds wonderful. The idea is, I'd like to go back in time a little bit, and I'm always curious. Did you make a conscious decision, I want to be a writer, or did you just how did you enter that profession?
Yeah, and I actually made that decision very young in life, which not a lot of people do. I grew up in the theater. I started doing acting classes and plays when I was 6 years old. And me and my friends would oftentimes write little skits and perform them and film them, like in our houses or even around town. And I found I had a real knack for it. But what made me want to be a writer was actually I didn't relate a great deal to American writers, and particularly to white American writers. But I felt a very strong connection to African American literature. And so it was reading Langston Hughes and Toni Morrison that actually made me want to be a writer. And when I saw the kind of stories they told, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to tell these stories. So.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, yes. I believe I told you my 3-year-old is here with me.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Okay, bendita. Hey, mamacita, ¿quieres jugar con eso? Yeah. Yes. No, dámelo.
That's cute. They're really wonderful.
Yeah, I actually, raising our kids bilingually, keeping that connection to their culture is very important to me and my wife.
You want her to be a writer?
Well, my oldest, I think is going to end up being a writer. She's been writing stories. She was a little kid, and she's 12 now. but she really loves books and devours them the same way I did. So I think she might follow my footsteps.
Is it true that in order to be a writer, you have to be a reader?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need to read, but I think also just being an admirer of the arts, because reading only does so much. You have to really have an appreciation for visual arts, an appreciation for theater, for movies, and for just all the different forms of expression that are out there in the world. And I think that all of that strengthens your ability to tell stories and your ability to express your own vision and your own singular voice.
Now let's go back a little bit to what you told me about how you got started. Basically, you were writing your own scripts. You guys were getting together and going off with whatever cameras you found and whatever. You guys were just basically producing your own programming. But
pretty much,
what do people say to you, like parents or family members or whoever in the community, when they see you guys doing this?
I was very fortunate to have parents that were very encouraging, but they were encouraging in a way that they wanted to make sure that even though I could pursue my dreams and all, that I was also taking care of myself. My dad, when I was a teenager, I remember him telling me, you can write and you can produce these things, but at the same time you have to pay bills. So you need to figure out how are you going to pay bills. And that always stuck with me. And I feel it was very good advice to give. So I always had a lot of that support. Of course you'd run into people just like anywhere who would kind of discourage you or tell you like, oh, there's nothing but struggle, or, oh, you'll never break through, or you can only tell certain kinds of stories. I've been told with most of the things that I've written, I've been told like, oh, who would want to read this, or who's the audience for this? My second book, The Feast of San Sebastian, which is about the human trafficking problem in Puerto Rico, I was told by several people that I needed to make the characters white, and instead of setting it in Puerto Rico, set it in like East LA or something. Yeah, they were like, oh, no, nobody would want to read a book set in Puerto Rico, and especially one about human trafficking. So I've gotten all the discouragement you could imagine. I've gotten all the insults you could imagine about my work, but I just stay true to it.
Now, these critiques, they come from other people who have also written, or just random people who just sort of knows you're an author and says, oh my God, you're wasting your time?
A little of both. I've had established writers tell me that, oh, you need to write something that's more commercial, or you need to not write in the style that you write in. I've gotten a lot of that from other writers, and also just from regular everyday people, especially in my family. My family, they like their art. They like their entertainment to just be entertaining. They kind of like, it's more escapist kind of stories.
Tell us about the plot in your books.
Oh, well, my first three books that have come out that I've been a solo author. I also have a book that I wrote in collaboration with an LA playwright named Jean Blazier. We did a book called Communion together. It was a World War II story. But my three books as a solo author all concern the issues of identity, and also of corruption, and of social ills that exist in the Latino community, and particularly amongst Puerto Ricans. So my first one was about being the child of immigrants from Puerto Rico, and trying to lay claim to your own narrative and lay claim to your own perception of your place in the world. And that book is called Traveler's Rest. And then Feast of San Sebastian was, like I said, is about human trafficking in Puerto Rico, and about how it's a critique of Puerto Rican society as pretty much operating like a black market, where people don't take responsibility for the things going around them and for their own choices, and not seeing how their actions do connect to these injustices and to these crimes. And then Kings of Seventh Avenue is the most recent one that came out, and I actually have a copy of it right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kings of Seventh Avenue is it's set in Tampa. and it's on the Tampa club scene in Ybor City. It follows two couples, and they're friends, but the two couples are going in opposite directions. You have a couple that just got together and they're falling in love, and then you have a couple that they just got married, a little more established, but they're very rapidly seeing that relationship fall apart. And in it, I make a lot of commentary on the problem of misogyny and the treatment of women, not only in Latino society, but also in American society, and how the things that go on in our home life ends up infecting the greater society around us as well.
Right, right. It touches us all. No individual is an island, so whatever happens there, eventually it sort of filters out to others. Um, as a teacher, sort of putting you in that role, you run into people that says, half of me is a writer, but I don't want to come out as a writer. I'm afraid, or I don't want to be criticized, or but I have this yearning to write. What's your advice to them?
Well, first of all, I ask them if they have written anything down, and if they've ever shared their work, or if they've just kept it to themselves. Because when a person really wants to get into writing, they have to be very honest with themselves about just how comfortable they are and how willing they are to be a public figure. You really can't get away with being a recluse as a writer anymore. You need to be willing to put yourself out there. You need to be willing to do public events, create a social media presence, network with people, get to know people. And so that's one of the first things that I talk to them about is like, well, these are the things that you really have to do in order to get recognized as a writer. But I also tell people that, if you just want to write, just to express yourself and just to kind of deal with things that go on in your life, that's just as important. You don't need to write to make money. You don't need to write to get published. Writing, like any other art form, is about expression, and it's about piecing together all the little bits and pieces of your life that you're trying to make sense of. And it's ultimately about empowerment. That's one of the biggest things is empowerment is, when you write, you're taking control of your life, you're taking control of the things around you. And you're the one who is just trying to get some answers out of all the questions that life throw at us. So you don't need to get published to do that. You can do that in the privacy of your own. You can do that in journals and diaries, and it's just as important.
Is there an age where one person is a better writer than others, i.e., middle age, youth, upper age?
Well, I think I do believe that the knack for storytelling and being a natural storyteller, that some people are born with it and some just aren't. I think there is something to that. As to when a person finally taps into that, it really depends on the kind of writing they're wanting to do, I think. I think that younger writers, people who get started when they're younger and they learn more organically, they learn more through reading and through just trying things out. I think that their writing, to me, is much more effective and powerful, and oftentimes deals with much more complicated kind of issues and themes. Whereas people who are a little bit older, I feel when they get into writing, a lot of times their mindset is a bit more businesslike, and perhaps they take on more of the sort of genre kind of writing as opposed to literary writing, and that's been my experience. It doesn't necessarily make them better or worse, but my experience has been that when you start writing, the older you are that you start writing, you take a less experimental approach. And I think that's where a lot of these self-help books or writing books, how to write, and seminars and conferences, where they really come in. I think they're much more for the people who start off a little later in life and need an entryway and need a little more of a support system. Whereas I find with people who get started when they're younger, they kind of rely on themselves a little bit more. But ultimately, no, whether you start as a child or a teenager, or whether you start in middle age or older, what's going to make you an effective writer and what's going to determine how far your writing goes is going to be your dedication to the craft and your dedication to expanding and growing and learning, and your dedication to just doing the legwork of pumping out those stories and getting them from start to finish.
You know, I write, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
always wondering about persons that like yourself. You have books out and all that. Do you pick writing, or does writing pick you?
Uh, I think it's a little of both. I say it's a little of both just because you can have that desire and it can follow you throughout your life, but ultimately it is your choice. You do choose to set your thoughts down on paper. So I think it's a little bit of both, but ultimately you need that impetus that comes from within for you to really pursue it.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of the program. Could you please provide our viewers with information where they can find more information about your current work, future work, and possibly other presentations you may have?
Oh, yes, of course. On Facebook, I'm very easy to find. I do have an author page, Jonathan Marcantoni, and on Twitter, I'm at Marcantoni 1984. Also, I have the University Project, which is an online mentorship program run by myself and author Chris Campagnoni, where we mentor up and coming writers on the social media networking, also self-editing aspects and public aspects of being a writer. That website is University Project, and university is spelled Y-O-U. It's U as in a person. So Y-O-U University Project 2015.com. That's our newest iteration of it. Also, I can be reached by email, Marcantoni, that's MARCANTONI @gmail.
Okay, you have a lot of sources, and I want to thank you for that. And as we're coming to a close, any final thoughts, closing statements?
Well, I would just like to put out there that if you're looking to be a writer and you're looking to really dedicate yourself to the craft, to not go the route most traveled. What really sets a person apart is when they tell a story that maybe you've heard 1,000 times, but they tell it in a new way. Pushing yourself stylistically, pushing yourself um, philosophically. That is where great stories are found. It's in challenging oneself as an artist. It's not in complacency, and it's not in doing things in a very foursquare, typical manner. So, in the short way of looking at that is another thing my father told me, which is it's not what the story is about, it's how it's about it. And so if you're looking to being a writer, and even for people who've been writing a long time, don't just tell the same old story. No story is absolutely new, of course, but try to find something that's distinct. Try to find a new way of looking at your characters, a new way of entering into a certain type of story. And that's where you'll find your gold.
In many ways, now I'm learning that if I pick up somebody's book, I'm actually looking inside their minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's
and we all have our unique perspective, and that really needs to be evident.
wow. Could you please hold up your book again, please?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have an image of you and your book together. There you go. Wow, that's awesome. Fantastic. Well, I wish you continued success in your writing. Thank you for your inspirational advice for anyone like you said, if you have a need to write. It's not an issue whether will you be published or not. Just get it out of your mindset and share it with the world, and let us decide what's good or bad. But live with that idea that it's important to share. Am I picking all this up correctly?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you're absolutely right. And I just want to thank you again for having me on your show. And
Oh no,
thank you.
anytime. And I look forward to having you and Chris and others all together in one show and continuing this wonderful dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be wonderful. We'll definitely keep in touch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're completing our interview with Jonathan Marcantoni, who is writing about the issues in Puerto Rico, but actually much more than that. It's talking about the human condition. And there's a lot of little things I learned in there. I just wrote notes all over the place. Jonathan, thank you for being on our program, and I look forward to having you again.
No, thank you. Have a good day.
Same here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Armando F. Sanchez. I've been your host today. Please, you can feel free to contact me at lsacnational@hotmail.com. And please visit his websites. And Jonathan, could you quickly just give us another couple of websites that you have in mind, again, that our viewers can visit, please?
One website I definitely direct people to. I am a contributor on it, but there's just some wonderful, wonderful writers. Is Latino Rebels. Of course, LatinoRebels.com is run by Julio Varela. That site is full of great talents who are Latino writers, and really doing the legwork and giving voice to our community and to the variety of our community. So LatinoRebels.com. Also, I would very much recommend people check out Across the Margin. They're an experimental literary magazine, and they're producing really great works, and they're real champions of new writers.
Jonathan, thank you very much for your time, and good luck with raising the family and in motivating them to also follow in your footsteps, the idea to have the arts in them and also appreciate it and share it with all of us. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, adios.
Adios.